Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we have episode 50. Holy moly, it's so cool. So we are coming up almost to a year of the Healing Home podcast / show, which is really exciting. And, I have just been loving interviewing people, getting to know people better, bringing people on who I really respect, who I look up to, who I feel as though are, really putting their best foot forward. And so today, that example rings true with my guest, Lanni of Preserving Today. Now, I first had Lanni on back in March, and I really loved our conversation. And since then, her and I have had, correspondences online, follow each other. We're really liking what each other are doing. And I really just love the changes she's been making lately and recently to her business and the content she's been putting out. So I was like, I really want to bring her back in and talk about all the new things she has going on. And we're also going to get into how you can effectively and healthfully stock your pantry for winter so that your family is all set up for, whatever comes your way as the temperatures drop. So before I bring Lanni in, I just want to say thank you to all the patrons out there. As always, you guys are helping to keep this show alive and my project going smoothly. So thank you as always. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Lanni to the stream. Hello, Lanni.
Hi.
How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure and honor, of course. So thanks for coming and taking some time with us here.
Yeah, congrats on 50 episodes too. That's a big deal. I've heard the average podcast only does like 3 episodes before they quit. So
yeah, that's pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Yeah, right?
I know it's usually like the same kind of stat you learn when you start a business that like 80% of businesses typically fail or something like that.
Yes.
And it's like if you can get past that hump, usually the skies are a little bluer on the other side
yeah.
there,
Compare yourself to the bottom of the barrel and you'll always feel good.
Yes, I like that. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I think I'm at 60, 65, 66 now. I started in October of last year. So I'm feeling good about the Greener Postures podcast too. Still chugging along. It's been fun.
Yeah, totally. No, it's really great. And you're always sharing so much knowledge and it's awesome. And it's also practical and it's embedded in all of our like bloodlines. I swear that we were all at one point, we come from lines of gardeners and farmers and preservers and harvesters and gatherers. And so the stuff that you're bringing to the table is really just helping people to kind of like reclaim that knowledge that we all have, right? And I'm stoked to be witness to what you're doing and to glean some info. So for anyone who's maybe not familiar with you or maybe missed our first episode together, if you don't mind introducing yourself and then letting people know where they can find you.
Sure, yes. I'm Lanni at the Greener Postures Homestead, and I have previously gone by Greener Postures online, and I've switched everything to be matching because my YouTube channel has been Preserving Today. And so now my Instagram is also Preserving Today, and I have a new website, preservingtoday.com, where I'm writing about the food that I'm preserving and ways I'm putting things up and batch cooking so I can be cooking healthfully from scratch for my family. And I'm sharing that as I'm learning and, as some of the stuff that I've been doing for a long time, other stuff as I'm learning. And you also might have known me from the World as It Is Today podcast with my husband, Chud, or the Greener Postures podcast.
Yes, all things that are really great. And you guys are just doing some really awesome stuff. And one of the things that stands out that you guys posted probably, I don't know what month it was, but it was towards the end of the summer. But you guys had some people on your property and you were like cutting tuna with a saw.
I brought a can to a jar to show. It's my home canned tuna. See how it's in big giant chunks? Because it's actually fish. It's not like the weird cat food stuff you get from the store tuna. Yeah, you want to eat that. Yeah, that was a really fun big production day here. I had a friend who said, "Hey, last year she said, I know a fisherman and he's coming in on the port on this day. Do you want to get some tuna?" Sure. I've never canned tuna before. Let's do it. And she brought over a big tuna loin. So that was already, there's no bones, no skin, no head or tail. And we cut that up and canned it. And this year she said, I want to do it again. I said, yes, I want twice as much. And then she said, it's whole fish this time. It's not a loin. I was like, cool, let's get into it, figure it out. She's like, I have other friends that are doing it too. I was like, bring them over. We got a bandsaw. We cut the fish frozen and then took the bones out, the skin off, and fit it into the jars and canned it. It was like, an 8-hour day. And I have 40 half pints of tuna fish for the year, which feels really good from our local waters, just fresh a couple of days in the freezer for just a couple days.
Wow, that's so cool. That's really one of the things I really love about you and watching you is that I can tell you just jump in and you just start and you just go for it. And like you have a very solid base of skills though, too, that are under your belt. But the fact that you just kind of go for it and you just start, that is like most of the battle. And to see that you always just kind of you creating something. And I love that spirit, because that's what you need in order to kind of live this lifestyle. And I'm sure you've found that out too along the way.
Totally. I mean, there's so many things that just kind of have us frozen in our tracks these days. So much stuff that's out there that's supposed to keep us in fear and in waiting. And there's not really any reason to play along with that game. If you want to try something, you can try it. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to fail. And the most you'll get out of that is definitely a learning experience. And then you go for it again, you're always going to do better. So, I think trying to do things that you're afraid of is a good thing. And then the more you do, the less you're afraid of trying new things.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I mean, you guys have, you have 2 kids, right?
Yeah, we have one that just turned 10, and then my little guy is going to be 3 in just a couple days.
Oh, awesome. So like you're passing all of this down to them, which is just amazing to me. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about as well, is just like having been able to watch your children, be around you guys doing this stuff, seeing this, feeling that spirit of what it means to just take a chance and go for something. What have you noticed over the years in them when they start to see certain foods pop up in the garden? Like, does your 10-year-old, does he now go, oh, I remember having that in a can or in a soup or whatever, are there things that you notice about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we moved on to the homestead where we are now in 2019. So my oldest was 5. And he had years before that where we had this tiny 4-foot by 4-foot garden, and I was really unsure about it. There was, some scratch cooking because, his food allergies as a young kid is what really got me into making food for myself and understanding what processed food was, and that things that I thought I was making from scratch weren't actually from scratch. He has such a different perspective than my 3-year-old who's grown up in this, like with this being an everyday thing. So the 10-year-old can be skeptical at times. And that's also, I think, his age. But what I find is that just by doing these things around him all the time, and he even when he doesn't want to participate, he's always listening. And so sometimes he'll be around someone else who's new, doesn't know him, they're chatting, and he'll tell him the whole process of sourdough, how wild yeast and bacteria rise the bread and ferment it, and it makes it more digestible, and it, no anti-nutrients. And I'm like, he's listening. All of this is there somewhere, even when he's not enthusiastic. And then you have a 3-year-old, they're enthusiastic about everything. They want to learn and do and clean and sweep and all of the things. So it's been really cool getting a kind of a second chance while living this lifestyle to be raising this second little guy who's so excited and remembers everything in the garden. He's helping me plant garlic this fall. He remembers where the strawberries are going to be in the springtime, even this last year when he was only 2. So yeah, I mean, he's seeing those things being grown and being put into jars. He's more willing to try them. And he has this really excellent palate. This morning we're eating kimchi with our eggs, and he's just having this spicy kimchi, and he's like just not even 3. And people are like, oh, little kids don't like spicy food, or they won't like sour things. And it's not true if you raise them that way, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do love that lately, you've been incorporating your son in some of the stuff. There was like a photo shoot you did and you showed him spreading. There was what did you make? It was something that was,
I think, sourdough bagels. And then I made one with a soft egg, and he was tasting the egg yolk too. So I did a couple behind the scenes things with him. He was excited to be involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love seeing that because I think too, I mean, obviously the more children that are shown these types of lifestyle, these types of habits, the better we are as a
For
freaking
sure.
world. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, moving
absolutely.
forward. Yes. So, I want to talk also a little bit about your rebrand. As you
Oh,
said,
sure.
you moved everything over to Preserving Today, which I love, by the way. I have to say, I mean, have you designed everything as
I
well?
built that website from scratch. I'm not a tech person. Yes, that was painstaking. It still is some days, but it's not my favorite part of doing things. But now that it's there and I can just add to it and throw up a post, and take my pictures, yeah, I built all of that. I have it the way I want it.
Yeah, kudos. It's beautiful. It looks really nice, and all your photos are looking super great, and the videos you're posting on YouTube. But what was the main motivation for switching everything over to Preserving Today?
So I started my YouTube channel over a year ago and I named that Preserving Today. That was important to me because that's what I'm doing here. Greener Postures is what we call our homestead. And so Greener Postures Homestead is what we called our agoras when we were having in-person markets here on our property during 2021 when people weren't really getting together still. Um, we are still greener postures and that has a lot of meaning to it, but preserving today is what we do here. And preserve, if you break that word down, pre and serve, and you think you're beforehand serving yourself, right? You're serving yourself and your family, your community ahead of time by planning. And so preserving today was really meaningful to me. And so I thought it would be, because where I wanted to put my energy online was more to this preserving today stuff, that I wanted to have that just be the same across all platforms. So that's why I changed my Instagram name to Preserving Today to match the YouTube. And then the new website's Preserving Today. So that just kind of ties everything together.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's a great idea. It's a great move, like on a lot of levels, because then now people they'll associate one thing with that. And I think that that's a really good
Right.
idea.
Yeah, and it's still a greener postures project, I say often. So like everything we do is a greener postures project, from canning tuna to the garden to the chickens to, helping my dad process the elk that he got this year, like all of that greener postures projects, right? And greener postures, the meaning behind that name to us was green being like new and fresh and vibrant and young and growing, and posture meaning like the way you choose to hold yourself when you're going to perform a task. So this new way of looking like how we were going to present ourselves and how we were going to put effort in is kind of the way we looked at it when we moved on to our homestead in 2019. That really settled in 2020. We really reinforced that with everything that was going on around us. And that's still the case here. And with Preserving Today, I think that just kind of gives me an outlet to share with people online. And this idea that food isn't this instant thing that just happens and pops up in front of us. It's really important to plan ahead. And the more you do for yourself today, the better, more abundance you can have tomorrow.
Yeah, totally. And I think the preserving, the canning, the fermenting, all of that stuff, it really speaks to living in more of a prosperous, abundant mindset versus the scarcity. And I think
Yeah.
that there's like kind of a thin line, because I think a lot of people, not a lot, but some people will automatically think of like canning, and then they think of like prepper kitchen or
Yes.
prepper pantry or whatever, which there's part of that, obviously, because
Mhm.
we're wanting to plan for the future to make sure there's something there just in case. But I think that there's like this spin on it. And especially in the quote unquote truther movement, I think there was like a big kind of emphasis on that. And so I think that I just love the vitality that you bring to it, and showing that, it's not just about being this frantic prepper. And that's not the only reason why we do this.
That's
You
so
know, it's
funny because that's something that, like, prepper is kind of like a bad word as far as the way I had a kind
yeah.
of a negative connotation. It's one of the first episodes I did of the Greener Postures podcast. I kind of sussed that out, and I talk because I am a prepper. Like, I'm looking at my canning shelf here. Like, clearly I have wheat berries in Mylar bag, so with oxygen absorbers. So
Right.
that's going on here. But for me, it was before the fear was brought down. It was before there were shortages of stuff. We were thinking, how can we save money? You save money by buying in bulk, but you have to be rich enough You have to be fortunate enough to be able to invest in that and to be able to store that. You have to have the space, you have to have the resources. And so it's like my husband and I, when we were first together, we're always like, I hope someday we're rich enough to save money. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
we're wealthy enough that we can, get ahead of things and buy in bulk. And it's not just because you don't know if the world's going to shut down tomorrow. That's a bonus, but really it is because then we're going to live this great life making things from scratch and saving money and being able to afford good organic food that I might not be able to afford otherwise. We can't get a deli meal from Whole Foods every day. And even if we could, it's not as good as this. So just being able to put a little effort in ahead of time and plan, we can live much more abundant life, like you're saying. So it's not about stockpiling Napa chili under the bed and storing ammunition. It's more about, like simple basic ingredients that you're going to use anyway, understanding what a working pantry is and how to rotate things out, using what you have before you go to the store, shopping from your own pantry before you go seek that out somewhere else. It's all that. And it feels really good.
Yeah, it should, and it's awesome. I mean, I don't know, I feel like I have a lot of work to do when it comes to that kind of thing, like the canning. I've done little batches of things, and I try and continuously have ferments going and stuff, but when it comes to the bigger batches or the bulk stuff and then preserving all of that, that's one of the things that I want to brush up on. So it's really inspiring, honestly, to
Thank
see
you.
what you do. Yeah.
Especially when you're growing your own garden like you are. If you're growing a lot and there's something that you love that you use all year round, and why not try to just grow a big crop of that and figure out a good way to preserve it? And there are a lot of ways to preserve things. It's not just about canning. Canning is an industrial way to preserve food. It's a newer form of food preservation. It's just in the last 200 years since people discovered it, so they say, and in the last, less than 100 years since it's come into our home kitchens. And it takes special equipment, and it's using a method that I don't necessarily agree with the best, because it is using a method that is killing bacteria and things that are present on the food. And
Okay.
that's why I'm so passionate about fermentation. So if you're going to start anywhere, fermentation is the way to go, hands down. There's so much you can do with fermentation. A lot of people don't even realize that is a form of food preservation. They just think that's something to, make a tasty condiment, or that's how you get sauerkraut or kombucha. That they think it's for probiotics. But all of that also makes it so that it can't go bad, that it's not going to grow botulism, that it's not going to get moldy. And so those things preserve the food.
Yeah, totally. And that's, I guess, one of the things that I noticed when I started doing the ferments, vegetable ferments and things like that. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is the OG way to do this,
Yeah.
And that to me feels really freaking good to know how simple it is. And it always makes sense to me every time I do a simple salt brine ferment or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, no wonder why this was the thing. And like salt is so important, we know, like curing meats and, salting a meat and preserving it that way, whatever, I just think that the world and nature just always does provide exactly what you need. And this is a testament to that you don't need all the equipment. You don't need the jar ring. Well, you might need a jar ring, I guess, but you don't even really necessarily if you're fermenting. It's like,
Yeah, a towel, maybe a rubber band.
yeah, right.
Fermentation is amazing. It's going to happen no matter what you do. It's like it's there and it's waiting to happen. And if it has the right environment, then it's gonna do its thing. And it's pretty amazing. You could put that cabbage in a jar and cover it with water. Push it in so the juices float above the vegetable and leave it there, even without salt, and it's going to ferment. You don't need salt for fermentation. It does help. It helps with preservation. It mostly helps with taste because it's delicious.
Okay.
It adds minerals to the food, but it's not necessary for the fermentation itself. Different for salt curing meat, like you mentioned. Yes, that draws that moisture out of the meat, and that's super important. I'm wanting to get more into that this year. I have a side of pork belly that I'm going to try to do the old-fashioned way with no refrigeration, hanging in the kitchen now that we don't have any more fruit flies. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, fermentation is pretty amazing. But if there is something that you want to stock your pantry with, salt is a good thing to start with.
Yeah, I would agree, and I always like trying different salts, and
Mhm.
seeing what happens, and I was, using Dead Sea salt, and I literally just made simple rice and, like, a Indian chole dish or whatever, and you could, like, taste the difference in that when you use a certain salt versus something else, and I think
Yeah,
that's, like it's like all these little subtleties that sometimes we don't notice, and we're so conditioned to just go for the table salt or whatever, the iodized salt. A lot of people, especially listening to this, know that that's garbage. But,
right.
I think, like I think the experimentation of all this stuff, is where my heart lies, because it's really interesting just to see what happens with certain things and the differences. And so, what are some of the things that you've processed or fermented or, just preserved that went differently than you thought? Does anything stand out to you that was like, wow, I wouldn't have expected this to be good, or I thought this was going to be good and it actually isn't that good?
The worst ferment I ever made was when I fermented Brussels sprouts. And you
Oh,
might be able to guess it because like, some cruciferous vegetables have that, like, rotten egg kinda smell to them. But
yeah.
I had done cauliflower before, and it was really good, and then I had read some people saying that they liked it. I fermented those, no one in the house would eat it, even me. I'm always the one I'll still eat it, it's good. I put all the effort in, it's gonna taste better to me, I suppose, but it was not what I wanted. Then I was super intimidated to make kimchi. I was really afraid that it would be too spicy or that it wouldn't taste authentic like the stuff that I liked, the real fermented stuff that I'd like from a small company that's local here that you can get in the store, because I wanted to make it simple with ingredients I had. So I didn't use the tiny shrimp, dried shrimp, and I didn't use fish sauce. I didn't use any fruit like a Asian pear they sometimes use. I just had daikon, carrot, Napa cabbage, garlic, ginger, green onions, right? And then I did get the gochugaru, the special Korean chili powder. That's the stuff that makes it taste like kimchi. But even after I threw that all in, I was really careful with the amount of chili. I didn't use that much. I just didn't want it to be too spicy that I wouldn't want to eat it. But when it was finished, it was better than the stuff that I had gotten in the store. Then I could sell it to my vegetarian friends too and be like, hey, there's no fish in this stuff. And it was really, really good. It didn't miss it. And now that's something I make all the time without even following a recipe. And it's second nature. So that's why I think it's so important, just even when you're nervous about something, just kind of try a small batch of it. And that's one of my newer videos on YouTube, and my posts on Preserving Today is how I make kimchi.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that one up because I was so stoked you posted that, because I did kimchi for the first time this year,
Cool.
and I had the same thoughts as you. I was like, okay, I love this local brand. It's awesome, small batch, whatever. Can I get it to be that close? And theirs is actually vegan, so they don't do the fish sauce either. So I omitted fish sauce, and I ended up finding a chili mix that it's not the Korean chili, but it had kelp in it. And I noticed that a lot of recipes will call for like a seaweed, or you'll make like
Yeah.
you'll make a seaweed, boil the water and then add that or whatever.
Mhm.
And I swear that kelp really added something. And it was honestly the best kimchi I'd ever had, like you said. And we ate it really quickly. And I mean, I only made like 3 quart-sized jars of it. And I wish that I would have been able to make more, but I couldn't, because the voles ate like all of our cabbage this year.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
bummer.
Oh my goodness. It was
So
such a
disappointing.
yeah, it was just crazy. It was like, because I planned the summer, and I planted all the crops that I wanted at a huge abundance of, so that I could do exactly the things. And dude, they ate almost all of it.
Oh, no. That's just horrible. Yeah, especially when they go for the cabbage. We get those cabbage moths that just put holes in everything, and I use it anyway and still ferment it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
totally. I had that
yeah.
same thing, because I'm like, okay, we have like 4 heads of cabbage. Oh, there's a couple holes. I don't even care. Like, we're gonna peel those leaves
Yeah.
off, cut around
Well,
it, and
this year I
yeah.
was lucky. I let some Napa cabbage go to seed the year before, and it tried to come up early in the spring, and that stuff didn't like it because then it got cold again, so it all died. But then later in the summer, some more came up, and I left that alone, and it grew to just before our when it froze really hard is when I harvested all that and made the kimchi with it. So it was actually a really good year for that. And then I got a fair amount of sauerkraut out of my own cabbage this year too. I think usually I'll make a big batch, at least a half gallon at a time of something like that. But if I am preserving something, that could be several gallons. And ferments, if you have a space in your refrigerator, that'll last a year or more. Right. So flavors will continue to change and develop, but usually for the better to a point, at least to a year. And then, stuff can start to get softer, textures maybe not as good as when it was new, that kind of thing. But yeah, other than I have dill pickles that I ferment those instead, and I don't can them. I leave them in the fridge because I like them better that way. Sometimes those will get yeasty, and so carrots or cucumbers, those two don't seem to last as long in the fridge, but pretty much everything else does.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. And your latest video drop has been your tomato preservation.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to talk about that one because there are a few ways to preserve, but if you wanted to get into specifically how you guys decided to do it this year, I thought it was a very interesting video.
Sure. So tomatoes are never all ready at the same time. So the problem is usually for me is I don't want to put the effort in to can something or preserve it until I have a large batch. And I know more tomatoes are coming. So by putting these in, just a Ziploc bag or Tupperware or whatever and sticking them in the freezer, then I can hold those until all the tomatoes are done and then process them all at the same time. And one of the bonuses to that is when you run water over those frozen tomatoes, you don't need to thaw them, just put the frozen tomatoes in, run water over it. The skins slip right off. And part of what you want to do to make tomato sauce is take the skins off. So that was really a nice trick to learn a couple years ago. And then my friend Tammy, she's got the Dirty Hands podcast. She told me, I think last year, about making tomato powder with the skins. So I actually just dehydrate those skins and then pulse them in a food processor to make a tomato powder, which you could reconstitute and use like a tomato paste or add it like a seasoning to different dishes. So it feels good to not waste something when you spend so much time growing it, to use the whole thing. Other than that, this year we decided to do tomato soup because I really liked the idea of, not worrying about cooking it down and trying to evaporate the water to make a good sauce. But tomato soup, you can just pop a can, put it on the stove, warm it up, nice sourdough, grilled cheese sandwich, and you have this really warm, comforting soup. That's like this ready, heat and eat meal. And so we did that, and I'm not regretting it. We've already eaten 2 cans of it. And I'm like, I only put up a dozen. Like we gotta slow down until it snows. Like we have to wait, and then we can get into it again because it's super good.
That's cool. I had no idea about the tomato skins.
Yeah. And I guess some people are sensitive to nightshades. The seeds and the skins can be like one of the more problematic parts of the plant. Okay. But if you're not having problems there, then give it a try because it tastes really good.
That's cool. And your friend Dirty Hands podcast?
Dirty Hands podcast. Yeah, that's Tammy. Actually, I think she's going to be on Greener Postures with me again soon.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Dirty Hands podcast, writing down notes. Cool.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. Yes. All right. So is there anything that you're really excited about right now that you've been working on in terms of preservation besides the tomatoes and stuff?
So we just got a half of a cow, and that lasts our family for beef for a year. It has I think it will again this year, but then maybe the year after my kids growing, we might need a little more than that. But between our homegrown chickens and the half of beef, and then we get a half of a pig to make sausage with from another local farm, we've got our meat pretty much covered so that we're not buying from anywhere outside of our county or raising it ourselves. So when I get my beef, it's important to me that the freezer stays organized. So everything comes out of the freezer, all the new stuff goes in first, and then anything left over goes on top. And I'm working with that stuff to try to get into a position where we're going to want to eat that easily. So sometimes that means like batching meatballs, and then you bake those off just doing a little undercooked and then freeze them so that all you have to do is dump those into some sauce when you're ready you want to eat them, that kind of thing. But right now I'm working on bone broth. So I ask for all the bones when I get our half a cow, and they give you this big plastic bag of like the joint bones, like knuckle bones, like the ball and socket joint kind of stuff. It doesn't look like you would want to make a soup with it unless it's like a cartoon from that kid's book with the horror, like the scary stories to tell in the dark. That's what it is. There's, I can't, somebody's looking for their bone. He finds a bone at the cemetery and makes soup. It always reminds me of that story. So this stuff though has great connective tissue in it that you can almost not see, that holds these bones together, right? And it has all this rich gelatin, collagen, minerals that are super good for you, amino acids. So I just roast those bones and then I put them in water in the instant pot. Actually, I've been pressure cooker and I cook those off, and it makes a super gelatin rich broth. And then I can that so that it's shelf stable for me to grab whenever I need it for, cooking. So we've been doing a lot of that to get the bones out of the freezer. And this is what it looks like when it's done. If this was refrigerator temperature, it would be solid like Jello.
Ah.
Yeah. So it makes it so that can just be there and be ready to use whenever. And then also saves the room from the freezer being taken up by that big bag of bones. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just had a workshop online not that long ago with my friend Anna, who's an herbalist, and she and I did this herbal bone broth workshop. So I've done the bone broth workshop before, and she came in with this how to add medicinal herbs to the broth. And I was like wanting to learn from her for a while. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let me learn in real time with my friends, let's do this live. So that is available on the Greener Postures website still if you want to purchase the replay, but it's a 2-hour workshop. And she had so many cool ideas because I've been pretty militant about this idea that bone broth is just bones. You have to leave it plain and then you can add it to lots of things. It's very versatile. And she's like, well, think of bone broth like a tea and how you can steep these herbs in it. It doesn't have to be like hard cooking all of it all together the whole time, but rather like finishing a broth and then for the last, hour or half an hour simmering something else. So I'm trying broth right now with astragalus and reishi, and it's actually really good. And so like how to add more of these like medicinal herbs into your diet in a way that maybe you haven't thought before was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was actually astragalus is what came to mind when you said that herbal bone broth. I was like, oh, I wonder if they worked with astragalus, but then I got my answer.
Because that's really hearty and you can cook that one down for a long time. And the reishi too, a smaller amount because it seems like it can get kind of bitter. But then when we're talking about leafy herbs, fresh stuff, dry stuff, just putting that in and turning your heat off and letting that steep for the last bit before you strain it. She brought this broth. I had this long list of stuff. Like I couldn't name it all. And it was so good. It wasn't what I think of as vegetable broth where it's like bitter and just kind of not that good. So I have like the next year of broth making is like, it's all new horizons for me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's so cool. Again, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of just trying stuff, asking questions, experimenting, and now, adding to the arsenal that's going to bring more health to everything.
Yeah.
One of the other things you guys did, and I wanted to bring up because it's one of my all-time favorite things is apple cider.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what does that process look like for you guys? And I think you also had a short video on how to make sparkling apple juice or apple cider before it gets alcoholic.
Apple cider, not hard apple cider, but the kind Martinelli's that you serve at Thanksgiving dinner for the kids.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So yes, we got an apple press and a fruit crusher this year. And I do have a review of the equipment we got on our website, preservingtoday.com, and I've made a YouTube video as well. Pretty simple stuff, like the cheaper end of the stuff that you can get, but you just crush your apples and then you press them and juice comes out. We have, what do we have? Oh, I'm spacing on the apples we have. It's like the best for juice though. It was so good. My 2-year-old has not had sugar really at all. So we're doing that. He touches the stuff that's coming out and licks it. And he's like, his eyes got big, and then he just shoved his face under the stream that was coming out of it and was like, ah. So it was a really fun day. He just kept grabbing a mug and dunking it into the bucket and running, and it was very exciting. But with that, you think about the juice you get at the store, and it sometimes has citric acid to help be shelf stable. It's almost always pasteurized. When stuff is pasteurized, it's treated at a very high heat, and the beneficial bacteria, enzymes, yeast, those things are already killed off. So they're not there for you. When you have this natural juice, it has all of that in it. And that means that if you leave it on the counter at room temperature, it doesn't rot, and it transmutes into something new. So you can get sparkling from that, you can get alcohol from that, you can get vinegar from that. So there's all these different ways to kind of like support that natural thing in whatever environment it needs to give you the outcome that you want. So I made apple cider vinegar, and that's done. I could probably start using it now, but I haven't yet. And it has a beautiful mother that grew there all by itself, just like, a kombucha SCOBY, just thinner. They're a little different. And it has the apple cider, the sparkling apple cider. You just need to leave that in a tight fitting container, this unpasteurized apple juice, and put it in your refrigerator for like 2 weeks. And when you come back to it, it will have this effervescence to it without the alcohol. The reason I do that ferment in the fridge is because it helps control the temperature to the point that the fermentation is so slow. You have a longer window to grab that before it becomes alcohol. Whereas if you do that on the countertop, you could be like, ooh, it tastes good. It's like an avocado. Tastes good, rotten. You know what I mean? Tastes good, booze. And so if you want to take it a little slower, try fermenting in the fridge. Still spontaneous wild fermentation. It's just in a little more controlled environment.
Yeah, I like that. I saw that video and was like, "Oh, dude, that is one of my dreams is to have an apple press because I love apple cider so much." It's just one of my favorite things ever. And I always
so
seek
good.
out, yeah, the good stuff that's local because I know that most of them are pasteurized or whatever. And I read every label, but specifically the apple cider when I buy it because I'm just like, dude, I want it to just be pressed apples.
Yes,
That's it.
it's not that hard, guys. It's just that doesn't last as long on the shelf because it transforms. They don't have control over what it becomes. So they have to like kill everything and then bottle it, and then they can sell it to you, leave it on the counter for weeks or leave it in the fridge for longer. Yeah, even here we have a local orchard that does cider, and they it's fresh pressed and it's cloudy, it's good,
Mhm.
but it's vat pasteurized. So that just means a lower temperature. It's just a different level of pasteurization. So it's better, but it's still pasteurized. So if you only had access to pasteurized juice and you wanted to make a sparkling cider, you could do that, but you need to add something living to it to inoculate it. So add some kombucha or add some whey from some live cheese or some kefir, or add even a ginger bug. You could add a splash of your ginger bug juice, and you have to watch it and stir it and pay attention to it because it will take a little while for those things to inoculate. And you need, what do they call it? Competitive exclusion. When the good guys are in abundance, the bad guys can't be there. When the bad guys are in abundance because they killed all the good guys, then it's harder to bring those good guys back up, right? So you're like putting a small army back in that needs to go in there and like reproduce and grow, and then the bad guys can't take over. But with all of this stuff, you can tell when something goes bad. It doesn't smell favorable to your nose,
Right.
Sauerkraut is funky, but it smells good. Like you would want to eat it. Like clabber, I don't know if you're familiar with, which is just
No.
soured milk, right? Raw milk, when you leave it on the counter, becomes clabber. That's because the natural bacteria that's in there will eventually like coagulate the milk, right? Then if you feed that like a sourdough starter, a little teaspoon of the clabber into fresh milk once a day, 24 hours. When you see it solidifying after about 24 hours, you have an active culture. You can actually use that to make cheese. That could be your starter culture for making cheese instead of getting freeze-dried cheese cultures. So you have to think all these foods in their natural state when they're not pasteurized are there to kind of just like develop and change. And you can tell that they're not bad. Leave pasteurized milk on the counter and it smells disgusting. You know that stuff is bad. Leave the raw milk on the counter overnight and it smells good. It's a little bit sweet, a little bit sour, kind of tangy. I feed it to my dog when I have extra, because just like sourdough starter, there's a discard involved. So I feed it to the dog, or if you leave it a little longer, it gets a little thicker and you can strain it through cheesecloth and have it be like cream cheese. And then you can use it to start cheeses. So I don't know, there's just so much with it, like with the apple cider and with pretty much everything. When it's not heated to death, it's not cooked, it's just left in its natural, sprayed with stuff, it's just left in its natural state. It's just has all this I don't know, opportunity to become all these different things. And once you understand how that works, you can just kind of like tweak the environment and try to encourage a certain thing. And it's so much fun to watch it happen.
Yeah, that's so awesome, man. I want to ask you this question because you said sprayed on, and it makes me think, because I know you're a person that cares about this stuff, but have you heard, I'm sure you have, of the A-peel produce
Yes.
stuff?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's concerning because when I was reading about it, it has all this information about how it's toxic, but it's also got organic approval. So
Right.
appeal can be used for organic, and it's basically, so even if it was just wax and there wasn't any chemicals in it, I don't really want that on my food. You know, when I buy apples at the store, I peel them before we eat them. But if you're thinking it's not just wax anymore, it's also this stuff chemical that you don't know about that they haven't used for long, you know, that we know of. Um, how is that leaching into the food? And even if it's not, just encasing something like that and letting it sit, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. But I understand, you know, the food system we have, they need things to last long enough that we can get them to go where they're going. So the only way we can opt out of that is try to buy things that are closer to our physical location and to grow things ourselves. And that might seem like kind of overwhelming or hard at first, depending on where you live, but just trying to make some connection, you know, start with meat or something. That was really important to me because I really care how those animals are treated. I care about the vibration of the animal and how I take that into my body. I don't want them to be sick and sad and scared and mistreated. And I don't want the people who are slaughtering and butchering them to be, you know, hating their job. I want
Yeah.
people who take pride in what they're doing and have skill and are doing it on a small enough scale that it can be still enjoyable and they're still thoughtful about it. And the same thing can go with produce too. You know, I keep thinking the stuff we're not growing enough of ourselves, like tomatoes, 17 and a half pounds is all I got this year. That's only 12 pints of tomato soup. That is not all of the tomatoes we use. We want sauce for pastas. You know, I want a can of it when I'm going to make chili or whatever. So I'm like, next year I got to find a local farm that doesn't put stuff on their food and go get it. Like the day, go pick it up from the farm, like not from the farmer's market. Go get it directly from them right after they picked it and bring it home and can that stuff for the year. Because there's so many questions about what's going on in our food system. And the things they let us know about are bad. What are the things they're not letting us know about, you know?
I know it, man. I feel the same way. And I just, when the A-peel thing came out, I like also wasn't surprised, but it's appalling because then you have lists that have come out now. Oh, Trader Joe's, blah, 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 so and so and so and
Yeah.
so pledge that they aren't going to carry it or whatever. And then these stores haven't said anything. But how do we even trust that anyway? Because I also question the organic stuff too in the stores. And depending on the store you go to, if you're lucky enough to even have a farm you can find it from, a farmer's market, or a store that really does care, like a co-op, you know, you can typically tell a difference. But if you're going to a big box grocery store and they have their organic section and it's this, and then sometimes it's really vague, you know, you're
The
like,
only way you can tell the difference is the price that you're paying. And it's
exactly.
and there's so many pesticides that are approved for use in organic farming. And there's like they have all this red tape that you have to go through that you pay to go through, but not so much oversight of them actually seeing that they're using best practices. So it's just like whenever you get something on that large of a scale, there's just less control and less, you know, knowing. I don't want organic food. I don't want certified USDA organic food. I want food from a farmer that I can look the farmer in the eye and say, how'd you grow this? And I
Right.
can stand in their soil and see that it's living. Because when we moved into our property, it's family property, but it had been rented for a long time. And the pasture here is about 16 acres. It had been rented for corn, and they'd been growing corn consecutively for I think like 10 years on this property. Monsanto corn with the big pink seeds that they put in that are coated in something, you know, and spraying and everything. The first year, my husband and my son went out to the field right after they tilled, and they were excited to go and see the dirt, you know, and walk in the dirt. And they went out there, and right away, even my little guy, who was like 6 at the time, knew. He's like, "This isn't that great, Dad." And
Yeah.
my husband's like, "It was just so quiet. It was not supposed to be quiet. It was like a graveyard. Everything was dead. The earth was dry and light color. And it's like just here on our property where there's been a garden and we've had chickens grazing, and you dig down and it's that earthy smell, and there's life and movement and like tiny little bugs you can't even identify, and plants and seeds sprouting and all of that. There's nothing like that out there. So if that's the way we're treating our soil and that's our neighboring farm, like how healthy is even like the organic section that's next to that? These big places don't just run organic farms. They run big giant farms and have an organic section. I just, I don't, it's so tricky because I don't want, it's like, I know there's death. There's always death in what we eat, right? That's the cycle of things, no matter what we want to. But the idea of just like plowing everything and having everything barren and everything sprayed and sanitized is just the same as why pasteurized food in the house doesn't work for us. It's just all this diversity and this stuff we don't even understand or have names for, that are these things are happening in balance, and like we just can't take them away. And no matter if it says USDA or organic or not, the processes that they're using are not beneficial to the earth or to the food system or to us. So the only way I can really see out of it is for all of us to try our best to support local producers and to make things ourselves.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And the key there you said is balance. Like you said, the stuff is here for a reason, because everything here is balanced, even when it seems like it's all wackadoo and there's no balance whatsoever. It actually is universally balanced because there is the scale of the universe.
Right.
And I already knew you had that philosophy, but to be reminded is very nice, because I think more people, it would be beneficial if more people realize that, because I think when you are on the opposite side of that, you can more easily slip into like a victim mindset of like, oh, they're just attacking us. Oh my God, there's nothing I can do. Oh, no matter what I do, it's all going to be bad anyway, or something like that, which then leaves you in a space of them feeling helpless. And then you typically, when you're helpless, don't really do much of anything.
What are you going to do? I might as well go get McDonald's,
Yeah,
like,
right.
It's so there's this huge sliding scale, like with anything in life, that's like, you always do the best you can. And what's interesting is when you do the best you can, suddenly this door or this sight, your vision widens and you can see something better than that. So every time you do the best you can, you'll suddenly see how you could do a little better, a little better, a little better. And before you know it, you're canning your own tuna. Like, it's like the coolest thing.
Dude, hell yeah. I love this. This is great. I want to transition a bit into winter prep.
Sure.
What does that look like at the Greener Pastures household? And if you have any, what would you start off with for somebody who asked you the question, hey, what can I do simply to just start prepping some things for the winter season?
So when I get asked that question from people, I always say, make a list of like 10 meals that you love to make at home. And then have a list of those ingredients. And a lot of those ingredients are going to be overlapping, right? There's going to be onions in pretty much everything. If you're cooking like me, onions and garlic. Okay. Check.
Oh yeah.
All 10 things. What spices do you need? What things do you use? Okay. So then you're going to see then you're going to organize those ingredients by things that are shelf stable, things that need to be refrigerated, or things that need to be frozen. And then you could start to make this plan of what you want your pantry to look like, with the goal being that on any given day, without planning ahead, you want to be able to pick from that list of 10 meals and make that at home that night. And then all you're going to do is buy those things to have that on hand, with one extra would be your goal. So you have, like, if you love peanut butter, you have a jar that's peanut butter that's open, you're eating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, always try to have one that's not open yet, that's behind that. So when you finish one, you have yours already. And when you go, then it still goes on your list. You go shopping and you still have, and then you get your new peanut butter that goes behind it, right? So that you're always kind of just a little bit ahead. And that's really good for so many things. Just, I'm too lazy to go to the store. I don't need to. I have this buffer that I can wait a longer. Or if you are tired of, or there's shortage of something, or there's, you don't feel like there's not this crunch where you just like need to get groceries delivered tonight, I really think that if you just plan for those meals that you're going to use, the food that you're going to use, and then rotate it like you're a grocery store. Put
Ah,
new stock in behind the stock that's older than that. Pull the older stock forward. Usually I get a Sharpie out when I bring groceries into the house and I write the date that I bought it on all the bottles. I don't care what the expiration date is because those things don't even like tell you when they're actually going to go bad most of the time. It's like a suggestion. I just want to know when I bought it. So I make sure I'm going to use the oldest thing that I brought into the house first. And anything that's brand new is going to go behind it.
yeah, that makes sense. I like thinking in the grocery store mentality. Like, even though I don't really care for grocery stores that much,
Yeah.
although I'm a food person, so I do enjoy, being able to peruse and be able to have the freedom to choose things when I need them. But yes, that is a really great tip. And I love the listing the 10 meals, your favorite 10 meals, and then just planning from there. Thank you. That is such a great tip.
And if that feels like too much, start with 5. It depends on how you
Right.
cook. If you're somebody who eats the same thing all the time, start with 5 meals. But if and I just say just dinners, right? And then kind of like fill in from there. Breakfast kind of happens by itself when you have chickens, make sure you have eggs in the house or whatever. But those ingredients that you're stocking to fulfill those 10 meals, they carry over to so many other things too. So you just kind of all of a sudden you're always making sure you have whatever fat you use to cook, you have whatever, broth or coconut milk, or because we love doing Thai food here, Thai curries and stuff like that. The spices you use all the time. And then you can dial into that and figure out if something's a refrigerator staple or a freezer staple, you don't have space. Is there any other way? Is there any other form of that food that you could store that is shelf stable? So that's when you get into like dehydrating things or freeze drying things. If you don't have a freeze dryer because they're super expensive and they take a lot of energy, you can see if you have somebody in your neighborhood, a friend that has one that you could borrow for a while to get some stuff stocked up. That's what I did this year, and it was really cool experience. I don't want one, but I really like that I have access to use it. Dehydrating things is really great too. Just kind of like try to get a little bit ahead, and it depends. You have to scale this to yourself because how much space do you have to store things? And know yourself. Are you very organized? Are you likely to use that produce that you brought from the grocery store, or are you probably going to put it in the compost bin in a week and a half and have eaten takeout 3 times? You know what I mean? Know yourself well enough, and then kind of like plan from there.
Yeah, that's great. We have a question, and if anybody has questions for Lanny about winter storage and prepping, you guys can throw them up in the chat. But Liam asks, should pantry be cool and dark?
Ideally, yes, but you can only control that so much if you're in a warm place. I bought this, $3 thing. It's like this little 1-inch by 1-inch square digital. It's a thermometer and it tells you the humidity too. And I just leave that in my pantry. And I have another one where I put my dough when I'm rising my dough. It just lets me have an idea of what the temperature is. And the humidity, so that I can understand that. Yeah, you want dry, you want cool, you want dark, and you want rodent and insect free. And to make sure that your stuff is that, you have to be present in that space. So I really recommend that if you don't have a pantry where you can store stuff in your kitchen and you're making do with like a closet in a spare room or something, just make sure you're going in there often and moving things around and dusting them off. And just being present in a place will often keep the undesirable things away, right? If you don't go in there for 6 months and then you find rodent droppings, are those new? Is that an old thing and they've already moved on? Or is it, there's a lot more questions. But if you're in there, once a week, just kind of pulling things forward and dusting them off, you have a better chance of catching it if there is a problem.
Yeah, great tips. That's key. The presence, being present somewhere is so crucial to everything, but specifically the stuff we're talking about, because you do have to be paying attention. Like you said, you're writing down dates when you bring something into the house. If you bought it, when you make it, there's a date on it. Same thing with herbal medicine. That's one of the first things I always try and remind people of, like, whatever you do, write down and label what you have in that bottle, because you might think you'll remember. And I've done it, many people have done it. I've also done it with food and drink, and I'll remember because I'll whatever. And it's like, usually 8 to 9 times out of 10, you do forget. And then oops, okay, I guess, well, I don't know what it is. It's probably safe, but I don't know, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
always a good.
Yeah. It's when you're fermenting stuff too. Write down what it is, write down the date. If it's a short ferment, write down the time, because you're only, if your aim is 24 hours, you have to remember what time you set it out. You think you're going to remember because it's like 20 hours later, but you got a lot of balls in the air. Sometimes it can be tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. So if there were 3 things that you would have for your winter pantry, what would they be? And they could be in abundance. Like you could have a huge stock of A, B, and C. What
Yeah.
would be like your top 3 things if you can narrow them down?
So in the pantry, I would definitely like say salt, broth, and probably potatoes, but coconut milk is up there. And that's one of those things that's like coconut milk at this point, the way I look at things is almost a guilty pleasure because I'm like, I don't live where coconut. I'm in the Northwest. I'm not
Right.
very far from you, right? I'm by the Canadian border. Like we don't have coconuts here. That comes from far away. Who knows what it really is? But I buy it in bulk from Azure Standard, this really good quality coconut milk that doesn't have any stabilizers in it. And I just get like 48 cans when I buy it and stock my pantry because I love Thai curry. And so it's so easy to have a cup of broth, a can of coconut milk. Curry paste is another thing that I always stock in the pantry. And I have one open in the fridge and we go through it until it's gone. It's just like you can make your own and do it that way, but or make pestos, get something that has like that big flavor kick. So you can just have basically fresh herbs preserved in a way that you can just add a scoop of it and go. But to have like that much flavor and that quick of a soup, and you can add whatever carrots, potatoes, those things all store really long. But I'd say potatoes, salt, and broth. Those things are important in the pantry.
Yeah, that's awesome to narrow it down. I mean, those are the basics. And I know that you and I could we would have like an extravagant meal together. Because
Yes.
all the things, all where your tastes lie and what you bring up and what you're making and stuff, I'm like, yes, this is totally my jam. And the coconut. Okay.
Mhm.
That reminds me of something I did want to ask you about because you recently showed how to make coconut kefir.
Mhm. Mhm.
And oh my God, that is one of my favorite things, as well as coconut yogurt, but not the coconut yogurt that has like the gums in it or whatever.
Mhm.
There's like one brand, the GT's, like the kombucha
Oh
brand.
yeah, that stuff's so good. I've had
Oh my
that
God.
twice, but it's like $10 for this tiny little thing.
I know it
Oh, it
hurts
was
my
so good
soul.
though.
I
Yes.
know because I'm like, it's so good. And it
It's just
really does make me feel good. When I eat coconut, I feel really great. And I always think of that too. It's like, well, yeah, there's no coconut trees around here, mama. It's like
I
this is
know.
coming from a long way away, but it's great. And so if you wanted to, and we can point people to your YouTube channel too, because you do have a video
Yeah,
on it. But
sure.
when did you first start making the coconut kefir?
So I've been keeping kefir grains for probably 6 years, I think.
Okay.
And they're my same grains. I've never killed them. If you think you killed them, you probably didn't. Just put them in new milk. But then at some point in that, of maybe 2 years in, my friend said, "Have you ever made coconut kefir?" I was like, "No." Do you need special different grains? No, just use your milk kefir grains to put it into coconut milk. You just can't do it too many times in a row because those grains do want the nutrition that comes from the cow's milk or sheep's milk, goat's milk, whatever, the animal milk. So you can do a couple of batches of coconut kefir in a row, but then you want to get them into animal milk again.
Okay.
So that's what I've heard. I've never experimented to see if I could, how far I could take them. I kind of, now I have enough grains I could branch them off and experiment and see how far, if I could train them to just be coconut kefir grains. But it's the same process as of making kefir or kefir. If you're fancy or from Great Britain, I just say kefir. It's what it looks like. The word looks like to me. So people make fun of me sometimes, but it's so good. It is like you can get it thick like yogurt, so you won't even need the yogurt anymore. It's got that beneficial probiotics in it. It's got the prebiotics because it's like that fibrous coconut. It's like it's so rich and creamy and delicious. You can use it to make smoothies or like a parfait or any kind of a dessert or just eat it, which is what we usually do. It's really really good. So yeah, about 3 years I've been doing that on and off. We usually do it more in the summertime because it's a nice. Oh, it makes the best popsicles for the kids.
Oh.
Coconut is so much better in popsicles because it doesn't get like icy like milk does, like dairy milk. So
Okay,
it's
yeah.
like you just I mix that, no sweetener or anything, and I'll layer it with, I'll blend some like mango with some of the kefir, coconut kefir, and then I'll layer just plain coconut kefir with the mango kefir, and I'll make this stripy popsicle, and like the kids love it, and we're like having this really fancy dessert, and it's like just there's no added sugar, it's just fruit and coconut, and it's so good.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. When I saw that, I'm like, yes, dude, I freaking love this. And the coconut industry or the fermented coconut stuff is very pricey when you buy it. There's fermenting fairy, I think her name is. She
Yeah,
makes it. It's
her stuff's
delicious.
good because it's wild fermented, but I've looked at the price and I'm like, that's cool because that's available for people who can afford that, but that
Right.
is not me. We are
Yeah.
very low income as far as cash goes. We're rich in a lot of ways, but that's not one of them. So that's just not an option. And if she was local and I could trade with her, then we're talking. But she
Yeah.
she does the fermented applesauce as well, and that's one of my favorite things. So that's also on my YouTube channel. That was one I made about a year ago. Fermenting applesauce is such a good way to use your apples when they're in season and make something so delicious and surprising. Like, it's even hard to explain. It's like champagne of apples. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, that is good stuff. Man, well, this is great. Is there anything else on your mind that you're working on that you have? I see you have another jar behind you. I don't know if you showed
Oh, sure.
everything. I
I
want you
did.
to be able to display.
I have today I started another honey ferment, which I like to do this time of year. And this is cranberries and ginger and a little bit of orange juice and a cinnamon stick. And so these are raw cranberries. When do you get the opportunity
Oops.
to eat raw cranberries? You don't, right? Well, you got to ferment them and then you can. So you're keeping all those antioxidants and the vitamin C and stuff like that gets heated out when you make cranberry sauce. This is just those with honey poured over it, raw unpasteurized honey. And this is going to ferment for a while. And you can see they like float up above the honey, and that's okay. I just put the lid on really tight. And I have this parchment paper here so things won't get sticky. And then I just flip that over, once or twice a day. And it's so fun to watch. It's like this lava lamp where the honey like floats out through it. And then I flip it back over. And in a couple of days, it's going to start to need to be like made sure you're burping it because it's going to start to bubble and develop a little bit of CO2. And then probably 10 days, you can start eating it. The honey will thin out a lot because of the juices of the cranberries. And the one thing I did do is I poked a hole in each cranberry before it went in just to help it let its juice out because the cranberry skin is so thick. And then you can just eat those. You don't have to cook them. You just eat them, and they're so good, especially on yogurt.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. I love the medicinal honeys, fermented honey. It's once you have fermented honey too, it's like holy moly, it's so delicious. It takes on such a great flavor depending on what you're doing, but there's like that it's like earthy to me.
Yeah,
There's like this
yeah.
earthy flavor that comes through. It's really nice.
I just put a video out and post on preservingtoday.com that was how I do my honey garlic. So you ferment garlic and honey, and that's so good for soothing a sore throat or a cough. It's like antibacterial, antimicrobial, but it also just tastes really good. So like on warm cornbread with butter, like this garlic honey drizzled on that, nice. Or adding to any kind of stir fry sauce, any kind of like soy sauce kind of based dressing that you're making, garlic honey, right? Garlic honey chicken, like glazed, you know what I mean? You start thinking, you're like, there's a lot of uses for this in the kitchen too. It's not just medicine. It can be food is medicine, and it's just enjoyable. So this year I chopped my garlic. Usually I leave whole cloves, and that's really been really good. But I chopped my garlic this time just to see how it would be different. And then my other honey ferment I have right now is just ginger and lemon slices. And that one thins out way faster. Super good to add to tea or even to just hot water. Just like anytime you're like, oh, lemon and ginger is good for upset stomach or just like when your voice feels, worn out from like talking too much. Like I wouldn't know anything about that, but I'm gonna go have some after this. But that's so great for that use too, is the lemon and ginger. I have a video that I've made for that that'll be out in a couple weeks.
Woo! Yes, I love it. So innovative. That's cool. Did you notice, what have you noticed so far about the chopping the garlic versus keeping it whole? Have you noticed anything?
I've noticed that it developed quicker, so it was able to let its juices, its oils out faster, so the honey thinned out faster. So I think it's just moving the whole fermentation process along. So this is one more tool for me to say, I want this ferment to go slower so I could leave them whole, or I want it to go faster so I could chop it up. Besides that, not really anything at all. Besides that, I can grab a little tiny piece instead of having to commit to a whole clove when I grab one from the jar.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I like that. I've only done them whole, but I could see how, the chopping would be really good for it. So, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody, I'll give an opportunity one more time. If anybody has questions for Lanni, throw them up. Otherwise, I feel like we were able to really cram a lot in like a little over an hour, which is awesome. And I love to hear you talk. So don't worry about talking too much. You do a great job with explaining things, and the way you present everything is just so warm and welcoming, and it's lovely. So that's why I wanted to bring you back on. I want to give you a post to share this stuff and allow people to find you who maybe haven't already. And you have lots of workshops, you have classes and things. So right now, go ahead and shout anything out that you'd like to, and tell people where they can find you.
So I think I will promote one more time the workshops, because they're really fun, especially when you come live. But even if you can't, it's just a 2-hour presentation, all like going hard on one subject, and a pretty good sized book with recipes and tips in it as well, that you get, a PDF book, and a pretty low price. I just asked $40, $45 from people. And that's all available still on the Greener Postures website. So that's the only thing that's still over there. greenerpostures.com/workshops. I have a bone broth workshop. I have the herbal broth workshop. I have a sourdough one. I have canning, fermented vegetables, fermented condiments, and fermented beverages. So my hope is that I can take that content and transfer that over into ebooks and eventually a physical book, because I want my own cookbook on my shelf. So it's a selfish reason, but that's a longer term goal, a lot of work. But I'm trying to get these into books with good pictures and stuff, so you can see how I'm doing things in my kitchen. Because I think that what I bring to the table is people don't have to do everything the same exact way. And you are going to know how to do it in your kitchen with your equipment and ingredients better than I am going to be able to tell you to. So what I hope to share is just like kind of this pathway to getting started, and the things that you can know to like not be afraid to just experiment and get into it yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome and great. And I encourage everybody to check out your stuff. I did put the greenerpostures.com/workshops up in
Thank
the
you.
chat. Yeah, of course. And then all your links are also down below for people to be able to find you. And from the looks of the chat, people are really loving it as usual, and asking what time dinner is, hearing all this stuff. So yes.
I'm making curry tonight. I have chicken thawed and ready to go. I'm going to go whip up some curry real quick.
Nice. What type of curry are you going to do?
I have Penang curry paste right now. So that's what I'm working on. I got some yellow bell peppers. I have some broth and coconut milk. I like mine kind of on a thinner side, so we use broth too. And then I've had my rice soaking for 12 hours. So doing that long soaked rice to make it more digestible. And I'm going to use our homegrown chicken. I was smart, and I pieced out some of the chickens this year after we processed them, and sliced the breast really thin and not freeze dried it, but vacuum sealed it. And so I don't even need to cut the chicken when I go up there. I'm just going to dump it out of the bag into the thing and stir it, and it's going to cook right in that broth. And it's like the fastest meal you could make, and it's so good.
Dude, brilliant. And as always, walking the walk and talking the talk. I love it. Honestly, I mean, that at the end of the day, to me, is one of the most important things. If you're, trying to help people and showing them this type of information, whatever your thing is, I would hope that you're actually doing it as well. And you, my lady, are doing it to the max, and it's inspirational as always. And I appreciate you and honor your work. So thanks again for being here. It's been really
thank
fun.
you guys so much. And if you visit my new website, preservingtoday.com, please leave a comment. If you're reading any of my posts and you have questions, that's a great way to communicate with me, and a great way to tell the algorithms that there's somebody there looking at the the website too. I was like, is anybody out there? But yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I love sharing. And it's just this time of year where we're all going to kind of turn inward and move into our homes. It's this great time to kind of focus on learning new skills because we have just a little more time. I've got 4 loaves of sourdough bread to shape this evening because I'm planning for my Thanksgiving stuffing. So I have to make my own bread, right? Bake the bread, cube the bread, let it get stale first. So yeah, that's the other project I'm doing this evening.
So cool. Well, Lanni, Godspeed.
Thank you. And I'm loving what you're doing, Michelle. I love the podcast. I heard you on Crow. That was very exciting. That's one of my favorite podcasts since 2019. So was really cool to hear you on there and be like, she was on my podcast first.
Dude, nice. I want to see you up in there too. You totally would just flow so well and be able to share so much stuff. So gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, since it's one of your favorites, I foresee it. My crystal ball, I foresee it.
I would love to speak passionately about fermented foods with whoever will listen. So yes.
Nice. Well, I wish you all the best and enjoy your evening and all your projects and your curry. And we'll talk and see you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Later. All righty, folks. Yes. Wonder Woman indeed. I know, right? She inspires me so much, really, because there is always so much to learn. And, it's good to learn and grow and incorporate all these cool things into our lives because it really does. It heals us on such deep ancestral levels when we do this stuff, like we talked about in the beginning of the show. So as usual, I've got some slides for everybody, for people who want to stick around for updates. Let's pop these up here. michelleshealinghome.com for all things the healing home. We revamped the website, added an online store, so it's way more streamlined. If you are wanting to buy products or get a hold of me or book a consultation, you can do it all now right on the website instead of having to, email me and do all that. So it's a lot easier, and we're really excited about all of that stuff. Let's see. Up on the screen is my current menu of things that I have going on. So if you are watching, you'll see what's going on, but I can list it off as well for people who are just listening. We've got hemp and honey soap, which I just made a new batch of, which, gosh, it just came out so nice. And I made one other soap that I'm going to have. So I'm stocked up before Christmas. So people who are wanting to maybe purchase something like soap or buy gifts for Christmas, this is a really good time to start doing that. Because I'm stocking things up and I'm making more batches of things so that I can have stuff for people if they are wanting to purchase things and give these sorts of gifts to people. So I've got some shampoo bars left, oat and honey soap, my brand new salt and clay deodorant, which I'm freaking loving. And I'm so glad I reformulated it. It was a reformulation I had in my mind for about 3 months, and I finally made it happen. So it is now up and out, and it's wonderful. And here are the soaps up in the flesh. You can see the pictures of them if you wanted to see the hemp and honey on the left, and then the oat and honey soap on the right there. Next issue of the Full Moon Offering newsletter is coming out on the 27th, and I'm really looking forward to this one. As always, I always have something up my sleeve, but for this one, it's a really special thing up my sleeve that I've been wanting to share for a while. So that'll be on the 27th. Thank you all to all the patrons out there. You guys are really awesome, and it's really great to have the support. It really makes a big difference. So Chance, Sarah G, Liam, Amy, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander, Spoons, Mary, Louie, Diane, Logan, Debbie, Natasha, Mary Beth, Nausicaa, Stephanie, Jennifer, Charlei, Peter, Elise and James, Amy, Rachel, and Trisha. Thank you guys all so very much. Patreon.com/thehealinghome for anyone who'd want to come and join us over on Patreon. Next week, we have Petra Mesa of Earthside Birth. Now, she is also a return guest. And what we're going to do this next coming week is we're going to talk about women's health, but we're going to talk about it through the lens of her experience as a former gynecologist nurse, or OB nurse, I think. And if she's still around, she can correct me. But she used to be an OB nurse, and she has since walked away from the allopathic system. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about women's health from the lens of what would a allopathic practitioner do for whatever issue we're going to talk about, and then what would be an herbal natural alternative. I am so freaking excited about this. We talked about doing this episode after I did my V for vagina episode. And I can't wait to get into it because I think that this is a really valuable subject for women and men alike, but to show ladies that they have options when it comes to this stuff, and to not be thrown into a fearful mindset when you're told you need to do this very invasive procedure before you were to go and do that. You should know that there are options. So we're going to get into it. That'll be on 11/21 at 4 p.m. here on the Healing Home. And yes, she was an OB and GYN. Yes. So that's what's going on. It's going to be a really great show. Looking forward to it. SymbolicStudies.com for all things Mario. He is, as usual, cranking things out and also working on a lot of design projects right now. So you can find all of his stuff at SymbolicStudies.com. And with all of that said, one last thing I want to say is I want to shout out Beautiful Blooms Seeds. I just got a lovely package from Linda, who I saw she was in the chat earlier, and she reached out to me, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, and asked me if I knew the plant Sweet Cicely. And I said, no, I don't know that plant. And she said, I think that you'd really like it, and I want to send you some seeds. So I just got my package today, and I'm so excited to plant these. She told me to plant them in the fall, and that the whole plant itself is edible. And she said it has sort of like a licorice fennel scent and flavor to it. So I'm really looking forward to planting this plant and seeing what it does out here in my zone, because she said she's in zone 2B and I'm in zone 8. So we'll see the difference and what happens. And she sent me this lovely handwritten note. So Linda, shout out to you. Thank you so much for sending me that. And she also made this beautiful necklace that you can harness a crystal in at the bottom here. And it took me by surprise. And it was so lovely to open this. So thank you so much. And I look forward to planting these seeds and seeing what happens and learning more about Sweet Cicely. So thank you. Check out Beautiful Blooms. She has a website. She also has a blog. She's a seed harvesting goddess, and it's really cool what she's doing. She's up in Canada. So check her out, Beautiful Blooms. And she's right here in the chat. Yeah, zone 8, it is warm, and we're in the mountains, so it does get a little colder in the winter. So it does freeze up here, but yeah, not till like a little later. We have a little bit of a window, so it's cool. But with all that said, you guys, I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you guys for being awesome, bringing questions, bringing knowledge, just bringing good vibes to the show. I really appreciate it. And until next time, we will see you soon. Take care and have a really lovely night.